Imagine a person who bears the responsibility for the death of every 10th inhabitant of the planet, not because he implemented abstract policies or faced economic collapse, but because he directly and brutally, with fire and sword, led his armies to victories and destruction. This person was so powerful that his military campaigns altered the climate of the entire Earth. His conquests forced tens of millions of farmers to abandon their fields, cease cultivating them, and consequently stop breathing their air. Their cities were burned to the ground, and in their place, dense forests grew, absorbing about 700 million tons of carbon from the atmosphere, thus impacting the global climate. All this is not the plot of an apocalyptic movie or a fictional story, but the real legacy of a man known to the world as Genghis Khan. Before we move on to the main part of our story, I would like to ask for a small favor. Your attention and interest are the best thanks for this story. After all, any like and subscription helps spread knowledge and make it more accessible. Thank you for your participation. Now, I would like to draw your attention to a paradox. The man who left such a colossal and bloody mark on history simply disappeared after his death. His tomb is one of the greatest mysteries, kept secret for almost 1,000 years. And this was no accident. The mysterious burial site was carefully hidden, with every effort made to ensure no one could find it. It was concealed with such brutality and fanaticism that it could compare to his own conquests. Rivers were artificially redirected and altered to hide the burial underwater. In the places where the tomb was located, entire forests were planted to disguise it from prying eyes. Those who participated in the burial were mercilessly killed to take the secret to their graves, never revealing it to anyone. Even legends about the location of the secret burial were passed down orally, carefully fabricated and thought out, like a smokescreen hiding the truth. Historians and researchers have unsuccessfully tried to find it, despite all efforts. No one was allowed to uncover this secret, and it seemed it would remain hidden forever. But in our time, in the era of new technologies and scientific discoveries, something incredible happened. The veil of mystery suddenly shifted, and what was rumored to have been discovered not only rewrote history, it shook the entire world to its core. To understand the level of this mystery, it is important to realize the scale of the man who left it. He was not born Genghis Khan, the universal Khan. He was born as Temujin in the harsh, windswept steppes of Mongolia. His childhood was filled with trials that could break anyone else. Exile, betrayal, hunger, captivity. These trials became his first teachers. His father was betrayed and poisoned, and his own clan turned away from him, leaving him on the brink of death. Temujin hid in the forests, surviving on plant roots and wild bulbs. These hardships hardened him, forging a steely character. They taught him that loyalty was not a birthright, but an earned merit. He also realized that the tribal divisions that had torn the steppe apart for centuries were a weakness. By the beginning of the 10th century, having gone through fire and water, Temujin achieved what seemed impossible. He united dozens of warring Mongolian tribes under one banner. But he didn't just make them bow to his power. He dismantled the foundations of their traditional society, completely transforming it. At the heart of his power lay a revolutionary military structure that was radically different from anything that had existed before. He abandoned outdated tribal orders based on yesterday's shepherd. If he had enough courage, intelligence, and dedication, could very well become a man worthy of the title of a commander of 1,000. That is, a warrior capable of leading 1,000 combat units. This approach to warfare bred remarkable loyalty and efficiency in the army. The warriors serving under his command were not just members of some clan or tribe. They were bound not only by blood ties, but above all by loyalty to their commander and ultimately to Genghis Khan himself, the great conqueror and founder of the Mongolian Empire. His army was not just a gathering of armed men, but a powerful, coordinated organism in which each rider and his horse worked as a single entity. The Mongols learned to ride horses much earlier than they learned to walk. This skill became vital and fundamental for them. Their troops consisted mainly of mounted archers, capable of remaining combat-ready for weeks, living in the saddle and subsisting on dried curd. If necessary, they could even drink blood from their horses' veins, allowing them to conserve energy in the harshest conditions. Their tactics resembled a deadly dance the world had never seen before. Lightning-fast cavalry attacks, with clouds of arrows raining down on the enemy, giving them no chance to defend. They used feigned retreats, skillfully staged performances to lure enemies into traps, and waged ruthless psychological warfare, causing the enemy to lose morale even before the battle. More often than not, rumors of Mongolian brutality spread faster than the army itself, causing entire cities to surrender without a fight, fearing annihilation. The Mongols built pyramids from the skulls of their enemies to intimidate the survivors, and used captured prisoners as human shields during the assault on the next fortress. Terror became as important a weapon for them as the bow and arrow. It helped achieve goals more quickly and easily. Between 2700 and 2025 years, Genghis Khan unleashed his formidable war machine on flourishing civilizations. He traversed the lands of the Tangut state of Western Xia and the Jurchen Jin Empire in northern China, reducing cities like Zhongdu, the future Beijing, to ashes and smoke. However, he was particularly fierce against the Khwarezmian Empire, which stretched from Iran to Central Asia, and it was this part of his conquest that felt the full force of his wrath. After the Khwarezm Shah executed a trade caravan and Genghis Khan's envoys, the Khan unleashed an apocalypse on these lands. Cities renowned for their wealth and status, such as Samarkand, Bukhara, and Urgench, were besieged and completely destroyed. Libraries were burned, scholars and craftsmen were killed or taken into slavery. Few survived. Genghis Khan's fury had a strategic nature. Each destruction served as a message to the next city. Resistance is futile, better to surrender. Entire regions, hearing the thunder of his hooves, surrendered immediately, fearing the fate of those who dared to oppose him. But conquests alone were not enough to maintain a vast empire. Therefore, Genghis Khan, despite his military might, became a great statesman. He was not only a destroyer, but also a talented organizer. His code of laws, known as the Great Yasa, ensured strict discipline and justice throughout his expanding state. This code protected diplomatic missions, traders, and even provided freedom of religion, which was very unusual for the time when the fires of the Inquisition were burning in Europe. He attracted administrators to his service, and the result of this grand historical event was the so-called Pax Mongolica, the Mongol Peace, a rare and unique period of calm and stability across the vast expanses of Eurasia. This period, lasting from the second half of the 12th century to the early 14th century, became a true golden age for the development of trade, innovation, and cultural exchange. During these years, the Great Silk Road, once teeming with robbers and bandits, flourished under the protection of the powerful Mongol Empire. As a result, traders and travelers could safely cross borders, and ideas, religions, and technological innovations spread freely across continents, connecting East and West like never before. New technologies and ideas began to penetrate from China to Europe. Gunpowder, originally invented in the Middle Kingdom, reached Western countries and became a crucial component of weaponry. At the same time, paper and the compass, previously considered luxuries and rarities, became accessible to European states, stimulating the development of science and navigation. Italian merchants, such as Marco Polo, could travel to the most remote corners of Asia without much fear, opening new horizons and riches for Europe. When the great conqueror, whose name inspired fear and awe among all peoples, died, his era of power did not end immediately. On the contrary, its influence continued to spread, transforming and adapting to new conditions. However, the death of Genghis Khan gave rise to a wave of mysteries and legends surrounding his personality and fate that no one could have foreseen. He died as he lived, on a campaign, in the midst of a military campaign in the territory of what would become northwestern China, where his troops were engaged in battle with opponents. The exact date of his death remains a subject of debate even today. Some historians point to August 18, 1227, while others suggest August 25 of the same year. This uncertainty only enhances the mystical aura surrounding the last days of the great conqueror's life. Who was he? A hero or a victim of circumstances? His departure from life was shrouded in mystery and ambiguity. The very fact of his death is not only a sad event, but also a mysterious one. Over the centuries, numerous theories have emerged, each offering its own versions and reasons for his death. One suggests that he fell victim to disease, possibly malaria, typhus, or even the dreadful plague that spread among his troops and camps during those harsh years. Others claim that he was mortally wounded by an enemy arrow during a siege, which according to some sources could have occurred during one of the many battles. There are also legends that he fell from his horse during a hunt, sustaining fatal internal injuries. Some speak of mystical events, for instance, that his death came suddenly when lightning struck during a storm, adding divine and mystical notes to his image. Despite the variety of versions, one thing is clear. News of his demise was not immediately disclosed, neither by his comrades nor by the people. The Mongol leadership took extraordinary measures to keep the fate of the great Khan a secret. They feared that announcing his death amidst military campaigns and conquests could lead to disorganization of the army, demoralization, and even inspire enemies to launch new attacks. To maintain control and order, Genghis Khan's closest circle devised and implemented a very complex and calculated plan. After his death, his body was secretly transported deep into Mongolian lands, where they intended to bury him. This journey was organized in complete secrecy, and the exact location of the great conqueror's final resting place remains unknown. The reason for this was the measures taken to conceal his grave so that enemies or even future generations could not find and plunder it. The most striking element of this story is the legend that all participants in the transportation and burial. It is said that the land where the last of the great rulers of Mongolia, Genghis Khan, rests was so carefully hidden that numerous efforts exceeding all expectations were made for its secret preservation. According to legends, thousands of horses galloping across the steppes repeatedly trampled this land to erase any traces, possible signs of disturbance to the natural landscape, and transform the sacred place into an ordinary plot of nondescript space. These extensive measures were aimed not only at preserving the location of the tomb, but also at making it practically inaccessible to outsiders, so that no one could find and disturb the peace of the great conqueror. Over time, nature itself took its course, and as if reclaiming what was once hidden, completely obscured any possible clues left from ancient tracks. These efforts proved so effective that even centuries later, the burial site remained a mystery, an unsolved enigma that continues to intrigue historians, archaeologists, and adventurers. Their searches, which began in antiquity, spanned eras and civilizations, from ancient manuscripts and scrolls containing information about Genghis Khan's final resting place to modern technologies, satellite images and laser scans that allow for the detection of even the slightest changes in the terrain. But despite all the technological advancements and countless expeditions, the exact location of his burial remains unproven, hidden behind layers of secrets. And although the physical mystery remains unsolved, another one lies behind it, a spiritual one. After the great Khan's death, his followers not only buried the leader's body, but also created an entire complex of rituals, sacred ceremonies, and protective spells around his tomb, which were kept in strict secrecy and preserved for nearly 800 years. These measures were aimed not only at the physical protection of the tomb, but also at preserving the spiritual legacy of a man revered not only as a conqueror, but also as a cult figure, possessing divine status. An important element of this secret protection is the region known as conqueror, or the Great Taboo, a strictly guarded area located around the sacred mountain Burkhan Khaldun in northeastern Mongolia. This plot of land, covering about 240 square kilometers, was intended exclusively for the Khan's family and was under strict control. Entry was categorically forbidden to outsiders. To ensure the safety and preservation of this sacred zone, it was patrolled by a special group of warriors, the Dark Hats. These hereditary guardians, considered keepers of the land, treated it with deep respect and reverence, maintaining its sanctity and preventing anyone from approaching or disturbing its peace. For centuries, the Dark Hats conducted ritual ceremonies and preserved the territory in its pristine state, so that the great Khan's burial site remained hidden and inaccessible to the outside world. They were a kind of living wall, guarding the ancestors' peace and protecting his tomb from encroachments. Local folklore adds even more mystery to these legends. According to folklore, the Mongols deliberately altered the course of the Anan River so that it flowed directly over the place where the grave was hidden. This unusual act, according to the legends, was undertaken to erase any traces of the burial, making it impossible to discover the Khan's resting place. This alteration required colossal efforts as it involved complex engineering work in a remote and difficult-to-access region. However, for the Mongols, whose respect for their great ruler was boundless, such tasks seemed quite feasible. Some legends tell that thousands of trees were planted in this area to disguise the landscape and give it the appearance of untouched wilderness. These trees grew gradually, generation after generation, with the artificial changes in the landscape almost blending with the natural environment. Another important part of this mystery lies far from the borders of Mongolia, in a region known as Ordos, located within modern-day China. This area, historically linked to Inner Mongolia, is renowned for its unique cultural and historical heritage. It is there that a grand mausoleum stands, erected in honor of the great ruler, Genghis Khan. This monument impresses with its architecture, which combines ancient traditions and modern engineering solutions, creating an awe-inspiring spectacle. Every year, thousands of tourists and pilgrims gather here to admire this monument and connect with the legend. However, despite its grandeur and significance, there are no remains inside this mausoleum. In fact, most scholars and historians agree that inside the structure lies only a symbolic tomb, empty and serving merely as a memorial to Genghis Khan. This complex, known as the Mausoleum of Ordos, functions more as a monument and symbol of national pride rather than an actual burial site. This situation has only heightened curiosity and sparked numerous speculations about where the great conqueror's grave might truly be located. Why was the exact location of his burial kept secret for so long? Why was the mystery surrounding this question so highly valued? These questions have puzzled archaeologists and researchers for centuries. The images and legends surrounding the mystery of Genghis Khan's tomb have turned it into one of the most enigmatic chapters in world history. Respect for the traditions and culture of the Mongols associated with this issue remains strong to this day. This entire mystery continues to stir the minds of scientists, provoking their unending curiosity and desire to unravel it. Despite the age-old secrets and numerous legends, modern science has provided new tools that have renewed the search. Today, thanks to satellite imagery, ground-penetrating radar, and magnetometry, archaeologists and researchers conduct their missions, hoping to find the answer to one of the world's greatest mysteries. One of the most notable and large-scale attempts to discover the tomb of Genghis Khan was an expedition led by a specialist from National Geographic, Albert Euman Lin. This researcher used a combination of modern technologies in his studies, such as satellite imagery, magnetometry, and ground-penetrating radar, focusing his efforts in the Kentai Mountains, located in northeastern Mongolia. This region is considered particularly important in the context of the search for the tomb, as it is closely linked to historical events and legends surrounding the figure of Genghis Khan, and is also considered one of the possible burial sites. Lin's unique approach involved actively engaging local Mongolian volunteers in his research, marking a new phase in archaeological searches. Together, they conducted what is known as crowdsourcing, a collective search during which thousands of people reviewed satellite images in hopes of detecting anomalies or signs of underground structures. An important feature was that the team carefully avoided direct interventions in the ground to not offend the local people's sentiments and not disturb the spiritual beliefs associated with this region. By analyzing the obtained images and applying non-invasive methods, the scientists were able to identify several promising sites that could conceal ancient burials. However, despite the fact that the final discovery of the tomb did not occur, this mission set a precedent for a respectful and scientifically grounded approach to archaeological research. Their motto was clear: to see through the earth without driving a shovel into it. This became a new standard in the search for ancient monuments. Approximately 10 years before these modern studies were conducted, from 1990 to 1992, another major expedition took place, marking an important stage in the history of the search. At that time, through the joint efforts of Japanese and Mongolian archaeologists, the so-called Three Rivers expedition began. During this long and painstaking, despite all the achievements and breakthroughs related to the searches, the final resting place of the great Khan Genghis Khan remained an elusive mystery. Research teams, even the most experienced and persistent, emphasized how difficult it was to find a single tomb among many similar-looking and similarly located sites, especially when the site was intentionally hidden and disguised. The search turned into a real challenge, comparable to finding a needle in a haystack. So many identical objects, and among them, it was necessary to find the one that was supposed to hold the secret of all Mongolian history and legends. In this challenging endeavor, the figure of an American lawyer who became a true adventurer in the search for the tomb, Maury Kravitz, stood out. His passion for solving this mystery continued for more than 40 years. During this time, he undertook numerous expeditions into the depths of the Mongolian steppes and mountains, often facing harsh nature and the challenges of local conditions. He had at his disposal not only modern technology, but also a deep understanding of historical texts, as well as the ability to rely on his intuition and personal experience, which set him apart from many other researchers. Kravitz believed that the burial site could be hidden in an area where the natural terrain and ancient rituals masked it so thoroughly that it could not be discovered by the naked eye or modern means. He speculated that the tomb might be concealed in a region where ancient rites and natural features created an invisible barrier protecting the secret. Despite his relentless passion and dedication, and despite numerous attempts, the tomb of Genghis Khan remained unfound. However, each of his journeys and expeditions gave rise to many mystical tales and legends. It was said that in these places, people and members of Kravitz's team experienced unusual dreams, encountered unexplained phenomena, suffered from unexpected illnesses, and faced technical failures that seemed inexplicable. These stories only added to the mystery and mystical hue of the entire search. Local residents often shared their beliefs that the burial site was protected not only by natural secrecy, but also by a spiritual barrier that resisted any attempts at intrusion. Some believed that supernatural forces were present in these places, guarding the ancient peace of the great Khan and his secret. However, just when everyone began to think that the search was nearing its conclusion, or conversely, had reached a dead end, new evidence emerged that turned the entire picture upside down. Data appeared indicating that the true burial site was located in a completely different place, far from the areas previously searched. Among the many researchers dedicated to unraveling the mystery of Genghis Khan's tomb, one name stood out for its boldness and controversial concept. It was the American scholar and former president of the Explorers Club, Alan Nichols. He proposed a hypothesis that challenged the accepted centuries-old notions. While most seekers concentrated their efforts in the Burkhan Khaldun area, a sacred mountain traditionally associated with the place of death and possible burial of the great Khan, Nichols suggested that the real site of his final resting place might be in a completely different region, in a more remote and less explored part of the Mongolian mountains. He hypothesized that Genghis Khan's tomb could be hidden in an area he tentatively called Mountain X, an inaccessible and hard-to-reach peak, concealed deep within the mountain ranges. This conclusion was not made out of thin air, but was based on years of research, careful analysis of historical documents, and geographical clues that could be found in old chronicles and manuscripts. Particularly surprising was that Nichols shifted the focus from traditional sites in the northeastern part of Mongolia to a region located at the Yellow River. These modern devices have a unique ability to detect anomalies hidden beneath the Earth's surface without damaging the integrity of the soil layer. Thanks to such technologies, scientists can identify potential man-made structures, ancient burial chambers, or other archaeological objects deep underground without the need for extensive excavations or disrupting the natural landscape. The results obtained with this equipment were truly intriguing and captivating. In several locations within the designated search area, the devices recorded unusual subsurface structures that clearly indicated the presence of hidden chambers, underground rooms, or artifacts long concealed from modern eyes. These findings, despite their promise, were never fully published or disclosed to the general public, which only added an element of mystery and intrigue to the entire endeavor. This silence created a special atmosphere of anticipation and heightened interest in the archaeological project. What made Nichols' expedition even more thrilling and tense was the level of secrecy with which it was conducted. Working in such a politically sensitive region, located at the Yellow River, required special tact and caution. This area was saturated with military zones, had restricted access points, and numerous levels of bureaucratic control and oversight. Nichols was well aware of the potential consequences his searches could have and paid special attention to keeping his activities as discreet as possible. Therefore, he avoided forming large research groups, did not disseminate information about his work, and refrained from making public statements. All actions were carefully planned and coordinated to avoid any unwanted attention from external entities or competitors. Such measures of secrecy went beyond ordinary political boundaries. Even within the narrow circles of archaeologists and scholars, Nichols was known as someone who meticulously concealed the details of his findings. Some critics questioned his transparency, pointing to a lack of publicity, while others considered such a cautious approach justified, given the cultural and diplomatic sensitivity surrounding the possible tomb of a national hero. Nichols himself held the view that premature disclosure of information about the findings could lead to undesirable consequences, mass unrest, disputes between countries, or even international conflicts related to the legacy of Genghis Khan. He feared that hasty announcements could cause chaos and undermine years of scientific efforts. And so, after many years of anticipation and numerous speculations, the most important and astonishing moment in this centuries-old saga finally arrived. Rumor had it that something so unusual and enigmatic was discovered that no one could fully comprehend its significance. After generations of conjecture, countless assumptions, and decades of scientific research, the long-awaited tomb, presumably belonging to the great Khan Genghis Khan, was finally found. This moment was met with awe and excitement, often hailed as one of the most significant archaeological events of modern times. It signified the potential resolution of one of the longest-standing and most mysterious enigmas in human history. The process of excavating and opening the tomb did not happen overnight. It was the result of long, meticulous, and very careful work, requiring a high level of coordination and cooperation between several international organizations and the government of Mongolia. Given the exceptional cultural and historical importance of this site, the unveiling of the tomb required official approval from the Mongolian government, as well as constant oversight by UNESCO and monitoring by representatives of the United Nations. All these measures were necessary to ensure that all actions complied with global heritage preservation standards and ethical norms of scientific research. Every step leading to the unveiling was meticulously planned and executed with utmost caution and precision to avoid damaging the unique site. Teams of researchers, government representatives, and experts in history, anthropology, and religions agreed on strict protocols. Only after thorough and comprehensive study and analysis was the decision made to proceed with the excavation. A small but well-prepared team of specialists, equipped with the latest tools and equipment, was involved in the operation, allowing them to work as carefully and efficiently as possible. During the preparation for the excavation, the team was accompanied by international observers, as well as representatives of local communities living in the region where the ancient tomb was believed to be located. Their presence guaranteed transparency and objectivity in the process and ensured respectful treatment of the culture and traditions of the people whose history they were about to uncover. Inside the explored site, scientists discovered a truly impressive structure, a large and intricately designed burial chamber that amazed with its architectural diversity and richness of detail. The architecture of this chamber reflected the influence of several cultural regions, many of which were directly related to the history of the Mongol Empire and its expansion. The walls and ceiling were adorned with stone slabs engraved with various symbols and ornaments, many of which were unique to the areas that fell under the Mongol sphere of influence. Around the tomb, stone slabs were scattered, engraved with mysterious symbols and runes, creating a sense of a sacred space guarding the deceased's peace. Inside the chamber, scientists discovered numerous burial items, each carefully selected and seemingly possessing deep symbolic meaning. These artifacts, rich weaponry, ornate ceremonial armor, ancient scrolls, and vessels with preserved food remnants, testified to the wealth and status of the person buried here. The condition of these items indicated that they were sealed with incredible precision and delicacy, significantly helping to preserve their unique appearance and properties over the centuries. One of the most important and significant discoveries was the finding of human remains. The skeleton found inside the tomb, by its shape and characteristics, fully matched the image of a military leader, a person who likely held an important place in history. a person whose name was associated with the early 10th century. The bones were in excellent condition, likely due to the cool and stable underground microclimate, as well as the tomb's airtight construction, which prevented the penetration of air and moisture. Next to the remains were fragments of rich fabrics, retaining patterns and ornaments that had not faded over time and remained bright and clear. These fabrics were carefully extracted and placed in special protective containers for further analysis to preserve their integrity. After the archaeological finds were carefully extracted, a new phase of research began, deeper and more complex. Scientists proceeded with radiocarbon analysis, which helped determine the exact age of the artifacts and bone remains. The results showed that the age of the discovered items and remains matched the presumed time of death of the great Mongol ruler, 1227. This became an important argument in favor of the site being his final resting place. Additionally, ancient DNA analysis of the bones was conducted, which, although it did not allow for a direct comparison with Genghis Khan's DNA samples, revealed genetic markers linking this individual to the Central Asian population. These results fully corresponded with historical accounts of Mongolian lineage and confirmed that the individual had a genetic code closely tied to this region. Special attention was given to the study of the fabrics found near the remains. The examination of fibers showed the use of silk and wool in the fabrics, as well as techniques characteristic of both Mongolian crafts and Chinese decorative art. This cultural blend reinforced the belief that the buried individual was connected to different regions, united within a single empire and culture. The excavations were not limited to physical findings. They opened a window into a long-forgotten past. The discovery of the presumed tomb of Genghis Khan became one of the most significant archaeological events of modern times, sparking a storm of emotions and numerous debates not only in Mongolia, but also beyond its borders. For the people of this ancient country, this event was far more than just another historical or archaeological find. It became a spiritual and cultural breakthrough, touching the deepest strings of national identity. The perception of this discovery was varied. Some felt pride in their history, others were in awe of the scale of archaeological achievements, while others experienced anxiety and concerns about possible consequences. For many Mongolians, this find became a symbol of the triumph of historical memory, a testament to the greatness of their ancestors, and a confirmation of the richness of cultural heritage. At the same time, the emergence of rumors that the tomb had been found also sparked internal fears. For in traditional beliefs, Genghis Khan is not perceived merely as a historical figure. He is revered almost as a divine ancestor, and his legacy permeates all aspects of Mongolian life, from school lessons and national holidays to folk legends and oral traditions. In the minds of many Mongolians, the idea that his tomb might have been discovered became an exciting yet alarming event. Some received this news with reverence, while others feared that interference with the sacred grave could lead to unpredictable consequences. Rumors spread about possible curses that could bring disasters to the country or even the entire world. These tales were rooted in ancient legends, which said that anyone who disturbed the Khan's final resting place risked bringing upon themselves terrible misfortunes, from natural disasters to spiritual calamities. From time to time, such stories gained wider circulation, causing genuine concern among part of the population. Some believed that opening the tomb could lead to political upheavals, trigger natural catastrophes, or cause a spiritual imbalance disrupting the world's harmony. Another perspective was that this was a challenge to the will of the ancestors, who had long kept the secret of their final refuge, and that interference in this sacred place was a direct violation of ancient rules and traditions. Beyond spiritual concerns, the opening of the tomb raised sharp questions of national identity. Genghis Khan is not just a historical figure, but a symbol of unity, national pride, and cultural strength. His image is widely represented on coins, monuments, and government buildings. The fact that his burial remained a mystery for centuries became part of the collective narrative, emphasizing respect for traditions and the invisible protection of heritage. When the international community began to take an active interest in this find, many Mongolians felt that their history, their sacred memory, was being taken away from them. Discussions intensified over who should have the right to study the tomb, who should care for the artifacts found, and whether these finds should be displayed publicly at all. The internal political situation became even more complicated, Within Mongolia, especially in regions inhabited by ethnic Mongols, the discovery sparked not only a sense of pride but also tension. These territories have long struggled to preserve their language, culture, and traditions under Chinese rule, and the idea that Genghis Khan's tomb might be located here or nearby became a delicate topic. In this region, there was a particular sensitivity as any hints of a connection to the Great Khan were perceived as an expression of cultural and political autonomy. Russia, with its historical ties to the Mongol Empire era and contemporary influence in Central Asia, also showed interest in this discovery, intensifying regional competition for the right to preserve and protect the Great Khan's heritage. Meanwhile, in the West, among scholars and historians, the reaction was more enthusiastic and hopeful. Many saw this discovery as a chance to confirm or refute what had long seemed an unattainable dream, to establish a physical connection with one of the most powerful and enigmatic figures in history, whose mark is forever imprinted on the pages of the past. This event was a true breakthrough, and in its light, Western universities, leading museums, and research institutes began active discussions about the possibility of joint projects. They seriously considered the prospects of DNA studies, as well as future research that could shed light on mysteries hidden beneath layers of centuries. However, despite the all-consuming enthusiasm and desire to connect with this ancient heritage, scientists were forced to exercise caution and prudence. They were reminded of the cultural sensitivity surrounding this sacred place. The tomb, which for many peoples is not just a monument, but a holy symbol. This discovery created a powerful contrast. On one hand, genuine scientific curiosity, a thirst for knowledge, and a desire to understand the origins of history. On the other, deep respect for the cultural and spiritual values that protect this place. For Mongolia, this moment became a true cause for reflection. Many questions arose. Is it meaningful to consider this the end of a long and complex historical quest? Or, on the contrary, does such an event violate the sacred land protected for centuries by traditions and beliefs? The perspective from the rest of the world was also full of contemplation. This discovery showed that the past is not just a collection of vanished stories or silent artifacts. It lives in the hearts of people, in their identity, in their beliefs and emotions, passed down from generation to generation, continuing to bear the burden of historical memory. This discovery was far from an ordinary event. It overturned everything we thought about the past, and has already begun to impact the future in ways no one expected. The discovery of the alleged tomb of Genghis Khan shocked the entire world. And although the initial excitement was great and understandable, it was followed by deeper and more complex questions related to ethics, heritage, preservation, and the future of historical monuments. While scientists are busy studying ancient bones, relics, and artifacts, a much more serious issue looms: how humanity should handle this discovery, which is both a historical treasure and a sacred site. One of the most important dilemmas is the question of ethics. This site is not just an archaeological find, it is a symbol of spiritual and cultural identity for the Mongolian people. For centuries, the tomb has been guarded by traditions, secrets, and even myths related to its preservation. Many Mongolians are convinced that this sacred burial site should remain untouched, and any encroachments could have spiritual consequences that are difficult to predict. Legends speak of curses unleashed by disturbing the peace of ancient graves, and fears that opening the tomb has disrupted a fragile spiritual balance continue to live in the hearts of many. For them, this is not just a scientific exploration of the past, but an expression of respect for the soul of their nation and its heritage. The very act of excavation raises the question: is the pursuit of knowledge and discoveries worth the desecration of sacred ground that has served as a pillar for their culture and faith for centuries? It is in this situation that the need for heritage management arises. The responsibility for further actions lies not only with the archaeologists, but also with the leadership of Mongolia, spiritual leaders, and international organizations such as UNESCO. They must find a way to preserve the dignity of this sacred place while allowing important research that sheds light on history. Discussions are already underway about options that respect traditions, for example, the possibility of reburial. Some suggest establishing a protective structure around the tomb that would allow access to the site in the future without subjecting it to destruction or damage. Particularly sensitive from a cultural standpoint is the proposal to allow traditional guardians, the Dark Hats, to continue performing their duties. This sacred discussion has extended beyond the narrow circle of scientists and specialists. In the popular podcast known in English as The Joe Rogan Experience, host Joe Rogan discussed the event with interest and amazement. He pondered the scale of this discovery, noting that it has the potential to challenge long-held beliefs about humanity's past and possibly even rewrite some chapters of world history. Rogan emphasized how modern technology helps scientists unravel ancient mysteries, opening new horizons in archaeological research. At the same time, he expressed concern that such discoveries might disturb the peace of sacred sites, affect the feelings of believers, and spark debates about the permissibility of interfering with cultural and spiritual traditions. In his reflections, the host pondered whether the benefits of gaining new knowledge outweigh the potential consequences and the risk of offending values that have been preserved in these places for centuries. He and his guest emphasized the need for extreme caution when dealing with such discoveries, urging listeners to consider the broader implications of unveiling ancient secrets that may have been hidden for a reason. While discussions and research continue, one thing is clear: future scientific work must be conducted with the utmost care, adhering to ethical and cultural norms. This discovery lays a solid foundation for new methods in archaeology, especially in the field of non-invasive technologies. Tools such as ground-penetrating radar, remote sensing, and high-resolution satellite imagery enable scientists to study potential sites without resorting to destructive excavations or damaging sacred lands. This approach could become the new standard, particularly in regions rich in cultural heritage, where every intervention requires special caution. Another promising area of research would be the possibility of analyzing ancient DNA. Modern technologies allow for the extraction of genetic information from remains without destroying them, opening new horizons in confirming the identities of those found in tombs and tracing their lineage. Ultimately, this discovery is not only about the past of human civilizations, it becomes a test for the present and a challenge for the future. It calls on humanity to exercise wisdom instead of mere curiosity and respect instead of a desire for conquest. The tomb of Genghis Khan may have been uncovered, but how we proceed will determine how future generations remember us. Will our desire to unearth and document every secret of the past become a form of conquest reminiscent of the one practiced by the very person whose peace we dared to disturb? A huge thank you to everyone who watched this episode to the end. Your support, attention, and interest are very important to us. Don't forget the importance of subscribing and liking, as they help us grow and create new interesting content. And of course, don't forget to click the bell to stay updated with the latest news and not miss our new videos.